Hey guys, welcome back to our income taxation class. Isa na namang session para sa ating Tax Nation and Inspire Nation. Alright, ako po si Elvy, a CPA and also a law student. Today we will talk about syempre yung introduction to taxation. Part 1 pa lang siya, pero hopefully makompress ko siya, no? May bigay ko lang yung overview. Kasi nga, if you buy this book, ayan, ito yung libro na to, Income Taxation, ayan, bagong-bago, 2021. Yung author nito is Sir Rex Banggawan, ayan, CPA and also MBA. So, Sir Rex, maraming salamat for inviting me to be part of your innovation, no, to this online platform. Ayan, so, hopefully, maibigay ko at least yung overview lang, no, sa ating taxation class kasi nga sobrang haba niya, pero it's good if sasabayan niyo ako while I'm discussing some of the important things dito sa introduction to taxation. Siyempre, para hindi rin tayo ma-bored, I will also give you some pieces of advice para at least may encourage din tayo as we go through this online platform. So I am so glad and so happy to be part of this new platform. Right? So, this is our book actually, no? Ayan, so bagong-bago, no? Income Taxation 2021. So, again, Sir Rex, maraming salamat for giving me this libro, no? So, sobrang, ano nga siya, well-organized, comprehensive, illustrative, simplified, and syempre may bago tayo, create na law. So, updated din to. Ayan. So, if you are an accountancy student, no, or kukuha ka ng CPA board, finance and business students, law student ka, taxpayer, and tax practitioner, para to sa yung lecture. Alright, let's start with our lecture. And sabi ni Jillian Michaels, sabi niya dito sa slides natin, it's not about perfect, it's about effort. So, tuwang-tuwa ako kasi nga during this COVID na pandemic, halos lahat, no, online tayo yung lecture natin, and even medyo challenging talaga siya. And that is why sabi ko nga sa mga undergrad students ko, no, shout out dun sa mga students natin sa Central Philippine University. And I'm also teaching them, no, Tax 42, 43, and also yung sa accounting. It's not about being a perfect person. It's about your effort at the same time, that we give our best, no? Whatever we do, we give our best every day. Ayan. So ano ba yung taxation na tinatawag? Sabi dito, taxation is a state power, also a legislative process, and a mode of, tatlo yan, no? Mode of government cost distribution. State power, sa madaling salita, ano na yan eh? Part na yan ng isang state. Inherent na siya na power ng state to enforce a proportional contribution from its subjects for public purpose. So, inherent, kumbaga, nandiyan na yan, naka-built in yan doon sa power ng isang state. And also, as a process, legislative process, no? So, part dyan yung pag-enforce, ano ba yung mga, yung purpose ng tax natin, is it for public or private purposes, and also a cost mode of government cost distribution. So sabi dito, taxation is a mode by which the state allocates its cost or burden to its subjects. Kasi nga, since ito yung i-discuss natin, yung Lifeblood doctrine, kasi hindi mag-exist yung government natin kung wala yung taxes. Yan yung ginagamit na pang sweldo, no? And so, kailangan natin yung every government na yan. Kasi nga madami tayong mga public services, especially during this pandemic, di ba? Kailangan natin ng vaccine, so infrastructure at the same time. So madami tayong education and social protection. So kailangan ng panggastos ng gobyerno natin. So diyan na papasok yung taxes natin. So we also contribute, no, doon sa, kumbaga, for example, may mga nasimento dyan, no? Actually, pera natin yan, no, as a tax payer. Ayan. Also, yung defense, no, public order, kasama din yan doon. And without it, kung wala yung taxation natin, wala. What will happen to our government? Chaos. Kasi nga wala tayong pondo no, will not relish the benefits of civilized and orderly society. So, yan yung purpose ng taxation natin, maging organized din siya, no? So, yan yung value. And at the same time, yan, a government cannot exist without a system of funding. Yan. So, underscore natin, kailangan ng funding ng gobyerno natin. So, kailangan ng tax. No? So, dyan papasok yung tax natin. So, theory of taxation. So, as you notice, no, as I deliver this overview lecture with you, so, medyo mabilis lang siya kasi nga, hindi naman siya into detail talaga na isang chapter, 5 days, no? So itong lecture ko, it's just a simple overview para at least you will have the idea, about income taxation. Ayan. So yung gobyerno rin natin to continue, provide sila ng benefit, sabi dito sa slides natin, to the people in the form of public services, and the people provide the funds. So parang cycle lang din siya, no? Yung taxpayer magbabayad sa gobyerno, and yung gobyerno, once may pera na, yung gobyerno natin, sila magde-deliver ng public services. So parang cycle lang din siya. So there's what we call the mutuality of support between the people and the government. Yan yung basis ng taxation natin. So kailangan ng tax natin para may pang-deliver ng public service. Ayan. So government and people. So government, sila magsaserve ng public services. Yung people naman po-provide ng fund sa pamamagitan ng taxes natin. Alright? Ayan. So, pasadaan lang natin, ano? Ayan. So, taxation is a mode of allocating government costs or burden to the people. Kasi nga, pwede rin mag-loan yung gobyerno natin from different banks, like World Banks, like sa China. So, maraming mode of acquiring the fund, no? So, yung ginagawa ng gobyerno natin, tinatax yung mga taxpayers natin. So, all these transactions actually, no? So, we have, pasadaan natin, no, yung dalawang theory, yung benefit, receive theory, and ability to pay theory. So, by the definition, benefit, receive theory, magkano ba yung benefit na na-receive ng isang tao? Doon papasok si BIR, or yung Bureau Internal Revenue natin. Kasi every benefit, may tatax gan. May babayaran kang tax, no? So, at the same time, meron din tayo ability to pay. Ano ba yung ability niya? Is it middle income earner ba siya? Or low income earner? No, minimum wage ba siya? Or may kakayanan siya to pay the higher tax? So, dyan na pumapasok yung theory na yan. So, we have two theories, no? Yung value receive mo, magkano ba yung na-receive mong the benefit. So, depende rin doon kung worth 1 million yun, the benefit, itinatax din siya based doon sa amount ng benefit na na-receive mo. At the same time, kung mas malaki yung ability or capacity mo to pay higher taxes, then dyan din papasok yung BIR natin. Mag-i-impose sila ng mas malaking taxes. Like for example, yung mga luxurious cars natin, di ba? Tumaas din yung mga excise taxes natin. Dahil nga, the more na mas malaki yung capacity ng taxpayer to pay ng higher taxes, then, dyan pumapasok yung government natin. Sige, i-tax natin ng higher tax kasi nga, yung ability to pay ng isang person is malaki siya. Right? So, yan lang yung ibig sabihin niya. Now, in short, those who have more should be taxed more even if they benefit less from the government. So, those who have less, of course, shall contribute less. So, opposite niya. Diba? Kung more yung nare-receive mo or ability mo, mas malaki yung ability mo to pay, then, yan nga, tinatax ka na mas malaki ng government. Ayan. So, ito, pasadahan ko lang din. Very quick, no? Yung vertical, in connection pa rin dito sa ability to pay theory. Vertical equity and also yung horizontal equity. So, sa book rin natin may example dyan, no? Yung vertical, Vertical meaning pataas, di ba? Ayan. For example, A has 200,000 pesos na income, while si B may 400 siya. So si A, meron siyang 200,000, si B meron 400. In taxing income, the government should tax B. Kasi ngayon kay B, mas malaki, 400,000 income niya than A. Okay? So, a greater capacity to contribute, since mas malaki yung kay B, 400,000 kaysa kay A na 200,000 lang. Then, vertical equity natin, meaning mas mataas siya, no? 400,000 compare mo dun sa 200,000. Meaning si B, mas malaki rin yung babayaran niya. Whereas dito sa horizontal equity requires consideration of a particular circumstance of the taxpayer. For example, no? Dito rin sa libro natin kinuha yung illustration, meron dyan nakalagay, businessman A tsaka si B. Meron sila pareho, no? 300,000 na income. A incurred or gumastos siya ng 200,000, whereas si B, nag-incur siya ng 50,000. No? Mas malaki yung ginastos ni A kaysa kay B. So the government should tax B more than A kasi nga, mas maliit yung expense niya, mas malaki yung bottom numbers niya. Mas malaki yung naiuwi niyang net income. So, mas malaki rin yung itatax sa kanya. So, vertical equity is a gross receipt. No? Gross receipt siya. Horizontal equity is a net concept. Gross meaning sa taas siya. No? Like for example, yung mga percentage tax. Taxpayers natin, naka-based dun sa gross receipts. Yung 1% na lang ngayon na babayaran nila. No? Gross. Ngayon naman, when we pay income tax returns, so dito siya naka-base sa net concept. Yan. Okay, so absorb muna natin kung ano yung daan-daan, ano yung mga na-discuss natin earlier. So, while we are taking a pause, just breathe in and breathe out. And read this message. Ano sabi ni Ralph Marston? Excellence is not a skill. It is an attitude. So everything that we do now, we do it with excellence. So excellence is not a skill na na-acquire mo siya, but it is an attitude. Yung posture ba ng heart mo kung if you want to learn more, no, about tax, if you want to learn more about life, about being a good person, a better version of yourself. So sabi nga dito, let's strive doon sa excellence na term na yan. Kasi nga, it's not a skill na kailangan pag-aralan everyday, but it is a posture. Ano ba yung posture ng heart natin? Ano yung attitude natin towards our endeavor? No, regardless kung saan tayo estado ng life natin, sa school, sa bahay natin, sa trabaho. So, it is an attitude. Ayan, so, quick breather lang, no? Para sa ating Inspire Nation. So, yan. Proceed tayo dito sa Lifeblood doctrine. So, sabi nga natin, di ba, we will just do some overview kasi nga mas maganda rin na you spend more time reading this material kasi nga it will help us a lot or it will help us better understanding dito sa topic natin today. Alright? So, sabi dito, Lifeblood doctrine, taxes are essential and indispensable to the continued subsistence of the government. Lifeblood. No? Pag sinabing lifeblood, siya yung sa katawan ng tao kung wala siyang dugo. Di ba? Pag maubusan ka ng dugo, wala ka na. Dedo na. So same as with our government. Lifeblood din yung taxes natin. So kaya dyan pumasok yung theory ng taxation. Kasi nga, it is a lifeblood. Yan yung pinakadugo ng gobyerno natin. So when we pay correct taxes, we are helping the government. At the same time, syempre, mas malaki yung services na may itutulong rin ng gobyerno sa atin. Yeah, so without our taxes, syempre yung government would be paralyzed for lack of motive power to activate or operate. Wala rin gagamitin panggastos yung gobyerno natin. And, yun nga, sabi nga natin, di ba, essential and indispensable siya. Alright? So taxes are the lifeblood of our government, and their prompt and certain availability are an imperious need. So kailangan ng gobyerno. That is why meron tayong mga monthly deadlines, quarterly deadlines na kailangan mag-remit tayo kay BIR. Kasi nga, critical din. Pag hindi nakakolect yung gobyerno natin, syempre wala rin pang gastos, no? Yung gobyerno natin. Upon taxation depends the government's ability to serve the people for whose benefits taxes are collected. Ayan. So, tuloy tayo dito, implication of lifeblood doctrine in taxation. So, we have, I think, 5 no, sa libro natin. Number 1, tax is imposed even in the absence of a constitutional grant. So, basahan lang natin na 2 claims for tax exemption are construed against taxpayers. Number 3, the government reserves the right to choose the objects of taxation. Number 4, the courts are not allowed to interfere with the collection of taxes. Number 5, in income taxation, which is ito yung pinaka-topic natin during this SEM. Now, letter A, income received in advance is taxable upon receipt. Okay, letter B, deduction from capital expenditures and prepayments is not allowed as it effectively defers the collection of income tax. Letter C, a lower amount of deduction is preferred when a claimable expense is subject to limit. And letter D, a higher tax base is preferred when the tax object has multiple tax bases. Self-explanatory naman yung enumeration niya, no? Ito yung mga implication of the lifeblood doctrine in taxation. To support, bakit natin sinabi kanina, if wala yung parang dugo ng tao, so sa gobyerno, dugo is equivalent to taxes. So kung walang tax yung gobyerno natin, then ito yung mangyayari, yung implication niya. Ibig sabihin, ano ba yung magiging consequence niya if hindi tayo nagbayad ng tax, ng correct taxes, no? We will also discuss those tax evasion, tax avoidance, so meron din tayong discussion about it, no? And so yan yung implication, no? Proceed tayo dito sa inherent powers of the state. When we say inherent, kumbaga nung may isilang tayo sa mundo, no? Meron tayong mata, meron tayong ilong, bunganga, katawan, buhok, di ba? Ayan. So, inherent, yung pagka-create ng state, yan na yung pagkatao niya. So, naka-built-in na sa kanya. So, sabi niya dito, the government has its basic needs and rights which coexist with its creation. Nung create yung gobyerno natin, kasama dyan yung mga inherent powers ng government. So, titingnan natin ano mga inherent powers of the governments. Ano ba yung mga powers? No? Ano ba yung powers ng isang state? So, it has rights to sustenance, protections, and properties. And also, pag sinabi nating rights, no, dubbed as powers, are natural, inseparable, and inherent to every government. So, sa lahat ng types of government or sa buong mundo, so these powers are naka-built-in na. So, hindi na siya ma-separate doon sa government. So, no government can sustain, hindi siya makakasustain kung walang powers na ito. No? Ano yung powers dito? Una-una yung taxation power. Kasi nga, without these taxes, wala ring panggastos yung gobyerno natin. And the power of the state to enforce proportional contribution from its subjects to sustain itself, kasi nga kailangan i-sustain yung isang government structure. And also we have this number 2, police power. So the general power of the state to enact laws to protect the well-being of the people. So kailangan natin ng police power to protect our boundaries against China, against other countries na gustong i-invade yung Philippines, or yung between boundaries ng local governments. So, dapat meron tayong police power. So, part na rin siya inherent. And also, we have what we call eminent domain. Pag sinabing eminent domain, sabi dito, the power of the state to take private property for public use after paying just compensation. Like for example, merong road widening, no? Kailangan mag-extend ng another 5 meters. So kailangan mo nang bayaran yung owner ng lot na yon, no? Or yung area na yon with a just compensation. So after that, pwede nang ma-take over ng government. So what if ayaw pumayag, ayaw ibenta ng isang private owner? So pupunta yan doon sa court to settle kasi nga inherent na sa isang government agency or government, like for example local government unit sa LGU, meron siyang eminent domain na kailangan merong power siya to acquire or take over that private property for public use, siyempre. Kasi nga gagamitin siya for public use, no? Like for example, road widening, di ba? Uso yan. Kung hindi pa na semento yung daan, sa semento pero meron pang kailangan i-extend. So, eminent domain siya. Ayan, so, assignment natin, no? Merong comparison dyan sa libro natin. Tingnan mo na lang doon sa page 5 of the book. Meron tayo dyan comparison, no, between these three powers. Ano ba ulit yung three powers natin kanina? No, taxation power. We have also this police power and also eminent domain. So kindly refer doon sa libro natin. Kinumpare niya isa-isa, no? And so ano ba yung scope, no? Punta tayo dito sa taxation power. So ito yung sabi natin inherent powers ng isang state or government. Ano ba yung scope niya? So pag sinabing scope, super comprehensive, halos lahat, no? Unlimited and supreme. However, despite this unlimited nature, it is not absolutely unlimited. Hindi lahat tinatax or hindi lahat kino-cover ng taxation. Alright? So, taxation has its own inherent limitations. So, since ito ay isang power, so sabi nga natin, di ba, mas malaki yung power mo, mas malaki yung responsibility mo rin. Okay? So, at the same time, with that power, meron kasamang inherent limitations na, hanggang dyan lang. No? Hanggang dyan lang yung pwede mong mai-tax. No? Ito yung taxation power na to. Taxation has its own limitations, and limitations is being imposed by the Constitution. So yung Constitution natin, yung law natin, yan yung naglalagay ng boundary na yung taxation power is hanggang dito lang. Alright? Okay. So, meron tayong dito when we talk about yung taxation power, territoriality of taxation. Meaning from the root word territory. Meron siyang tawag dito boundaries, no? Provided doon sa isang state. Hindi pwedeng itatax mo yung Japan o itatax mo yung Korea. So within that boundaries lang ng Philippines yung pwede mong i-tax. Alright? So yung gobyerno natin can only demand tax obligation upon its subjects or residents within its territorial jurisdiction. So yung mga Filipinos or within that area or ng Philippine boundaries, yan lang pwede niyang i-tax. So ibig sabihin, walang basis yung mga taxing foreign subjects natin abroad. Kasi nga, hindi naman sila part ng Philippines, no? Tax mo yung mga taga-abroad, mga taga-Japan, di ba? So it's not part. Furthermore, extraterritorial taxation will amount to encroachment of foreign sovereignty. So ibig sabihin, within that boundaries lang ng Philippines, yung taxation power niya. Hindi pwedeng mag-exceed doon. Ayan. So, ibig sabihin, the government can only demand tax obligation upon its subjects. Ayan. So, quick breather ulit, no? As we go through these slides, kasi nga, medyo mahaba-haba rin itong chapter 1. So, I tried to give you some examples, some details, some explanation. And as you notice, no, nilimit ko lang yung slides ko, no, for few 5 to 6 lines para at least para mas ma-absorb natin. Alright? So, sabi nga dito, focus on your goal. Focus on your goal. Ano ba yung goal natin sa life natin, guys? So, we have our own goal. Don't look at any direction but ahead. So, ito, actually limited lang yan yung sayings na nilagay ko dito. It's because you have also to consider bakit ka bumabangon sa morning, bakit ka nagre-review for the CPA board, bakit ka nag-aaral. So, you have also to think about those things. Focus on those goals, and you have also to consider ano ba yung nag-fuel sa'yo, ano yung nagpo-push sa'yo towards your goal. So, consider those things. No? So, ibig sabihin dito yung second sentence, don't look in any direction but ahead. Sometimes, yan yung medyo challenge daw this generation has medyo kulang tayo sa focus, no? We want this, we want that, we want those things, we want these things, and ayan, simple reminder lang, focus on your goal. Ayan. So, twofold obligations, balik tayo dito sa tax, no? Twofold obligations of taxpayers. Ano daw yun? Yung una is to filing of returns and payment of taxes. And kailangan natin magbayad, mag-file ng tamang buwis. And number two, withholding of taxes on expenses and its remittance to the government. So, dalawa. We have to file the returns and pay the correct taxes and withholding taxes, syempre, on those expenses. Pag nag-incur kasi tayo, guys, meron tayong taxpayers na required to withhold and to remit those withheld taxes dun sa BIR. So, these obligations can only be demanded and enforced within the Philippine government upon its citizens. So, ito pa rin yung reality. Ayan, medyo nabubulol na tayo. Territory within the territory of the Philippines, doon lang yung pwede niyang ma-enforce yung tax obligations. It cannot enforce dun sa mga outside the Philippine government. Ayan. So we have also, since meron tayong general rule, no, na sinabi kanina, meron tayo dong exception to that general rule. So in income taxation, the resident citizens and domestic corporations are taxable on income derived both within and outside the Philippines. Like for example, yung Jollibee. Diba, merong mga branch yung Jollibee dito sa Philippines. Meron silang branch sa labas ng bansa, sa labas ng Philippines. So, since sila, resident citizens, mga Pinoy, yung income nila doon, outside the Philippines, sabi dito sa exemption, sa territoriality principle, itatax pa rin yung income nila doon sa Japan, sa Korea, sa Singapore. Iko-consolidate yun dito sa BIR sa Philippines. Itatax pa rin yun. So, yan yung exception to the territoriality principle. Ayan. So, in transfer taxation, residents or citizens, such resident citizens, NRA, and resident aliens, ayan, are taxable on transfers of properties located within or outside the Philippines. So, part pa rin siya ng exception to the rule. So, punta tayo dito sa international comity. No, pasadaan lang natin, no? In the UN Convention, countries of the world agreed to one fundamental concept of co-equal sovereignty wherein all nations are deemed equal with one another. So, pantay-pantay raw yung mga countries regardless kung ano yung race, relihiyon, kultura, economic condition, or military power. So, yan yung definition ng international comity. Ibig sabihin, no country is powerful than the other. No? Hindi mas higit yung US, sa China, sa Philippines, wala, pantay-pantayan. It is by principle that each country observes international comity or mutual courtesy or reciprocity between them. Okay, so they both, between countries, they both respect each other. No? So, ibig sabihin, governments do not tax the income and properties of other governments. So, kung ano lang yung jurisdiction ng Philippines, doon lang siya. Alright? Ayan. Okay, punta tayo dito sa public purpose. Okay? Ito pa rin yung subtopics under the inherent limitations of taxing power. So, ano ba yung public purpose? So, tax is intended to for the common good. Right? So, public purpose siya. Common good. Hindi pwedeng private purpose. Hindi pwedeng para doon lang sa mga politicians. Okay? It cannot be exercised to further any private interest. So, may private interest ka, hindi yan yung purpose ng taxes natin. Okay? So, ano ba yung exemption of the government? So, under the NIRC or National Internal Revenue Code, yung gobyerno natin, government properties and income from essential public functions are not subject to taxation. Okay, yung gobyerno natin, syempre sila yung nagko-collect ng taxes. Hindi mo sila pwedeng i-tax. Alright? Ayan. So, however, yung income ng government from its properties are conducted for profit, including income from government, mga GOCCs natin, is subject to tax. Kasi nga, it's a different thing. Kasi nga, we have some GOCCs that are earning income. So, sabi ng law natin, once nag-earn yung government-owned and controlled corporations na yun, sasubject nila sa tax. But in general, government are exempted to taxes. Ayan. Okay? Meron din tayong sinasabi dito na non-delegation of the taxing power. Ibig sabihin, yung taxing power natin ng gobyerno is only exclusive. Pag sinabi exclusive, para lang yan dun sa Congress. Hindi yan pwede ma-delegate dito sa baba ng Congress. Hindi pwedeng i-delegate sa munisipyo, sa probinsya, no? Hindi siya pwede sa city government, hindi siya pwede kasi nga exclusive lang siya sa Kongreso natin. Doon lang yung power of lawmaking, including taxation, is delegated to the people of the legislature. So, sino ba yung mga nasa batasang pambansa natin, di ba? Congressman, mga senators, so sila lang. Alright? Yan. So, yun lang yung ibig sabihin ng non-delegation of taxing power kasi nga hindi siya pwedeng i-delegate yung taxing power. Kasi nga para lang sa Congress. Yan. So, exceptions to the rule of non-delegation. Itong tax laws natin, meron siyang general rule at saka meron din siya sa baba exception to the rule. So, medyo tricky din siya, no? Pag sinabi ng general rule, government are not subject to taxes. Tapos, meron dito sa baba, merong exemption to the rule. Now, once mag-earn daw siya, subject na ulit siya sa taxes. Ayan. So, ano pa yung mga exemptions natin? Kasi nga sabi natin, non-delegation. Hindi siya pwedeng i-delegate yung taxing power ng government. So, sabi dito, under our Constitution, LGUs are allowed to exercise the power to tax to enable them to exercise their fiscal autonomy. Sabi naman dito, pwede naman tao. Pero for those LGUs lang, kasi nga they have their own local government code. But, syempre, mas mataas pa rin yung scope ng taxing power ng Congress natin. Mag-a-abide pa rin doon. No? Number 2, under the Tariff and Customs Code, the President is empowered to fix the amount of tariffs to be flexible to trade conditions. Kasi nga sabi natin, Executive Department, dyan pumapasok yung President natin tsaka yung mga cabinet members niya. Ito naman sa kabila, yung Legislative Department, dyan yung Senate tsaka yung Congress. No? Dyan pumapasok. So sabi dito, since yung Congress lang yung allowed, sabi dito, under the Tariff and Customs Code, pwede raw i-empower, no? Yung President, yung Executive Department, to fix magkano yung tariff Pero dyan lang, sa tariff and customs code. Ano pa? Number 3, other cases that require expedient and effective administration and implementation of assessment and collection of taxes. Alright? So after that, non-delegation, yan yung tatlong exemption to the rule. Punta tayo dito sa due process of law. Pag sinabing due process, di ba yung pumapasok sa mind natin? Ano, for example, pag nahuli ka, ano yung right ng isang suspect, di ba? Or ano yung due process, itatax ka na lang without any explanation na wala pala siya sa local government code, gawa-gawa lang. So, walang due process doon. Sabi dito, no one should be deprived of his life, liberty, kalayaan mo, or property without due process of law. So, tax laws should neither be harsh nor oppressive. So, hindi pwedeng, since ikaw yung nakaupo as LGU or isa ka dyan sa mga department heads, so pag pinuntahan mo isang lugar tapos gusto mong i-demolish yung area, hindi siya pwede pag walang due process of law. Right? So, dalawang aspect yan, no? We have substantive due process, no? Aspects of due process. Pag sinabing substantive, sabi dito sa slides natin, tax must be imposed only for public purpose. Hindi siya pwede for private purpose ng politician. Right? So, kailangan yung tax na i-impose mo is not self-serving na para lang sa mga politicians. So, hindi siya pwede. So, collected only under the authority of a valid law. So, dapat may valid law rin. No? And only by the taxing power having jurisdiction. Okay? So, an assessment without a legal basis violates the requirement of due process. Pag nag-assess ka ng tax tapos wala kang basis, no? Wala kang legal basis, pwede kang kasuhan. So, since nalabag mo yung due process ng taxation. Also, sabi dito, tax must be imposed, no, on a public purpose. There should be no arbitrariness. So, hindi ibig sabihin walang parang, parang pinaboran ng gobyerno itong party na to kaysa dito. So, hindi pwedeng ganun. Dapat pantay-pantay siya. The government shall also, at all times, taxpayers' right to notice and hearing. Hindi pwedeng pupuntahan mo lang yung taxpayer tapos hihingan mo ng 5 million, 10 million, no? I-ano mo lang siya, kakasuhan mo lang, tapos walang any due process, di ba? So, ano yan, mata-technical tayo dyan. So, ito, tax due process number 2 na aspect niya, kanina substantive, ito na procedural, due process. Ibig sabihin, pag nilabag mo yung procedure ng law, kasi nga may due process na yung procedure niya, hindi pwedeng collect ka agad. So, dapat merong notice, meron pang hearing, no? Marami pang levels na kailangang daanan. So, substantive and procedural. Right? So, under nga sabi dito sa NIRC, assessment shall be made within 3 years from due date of filing of the return or from the date of actual filing. So, yan yung procedural due process. Pag nag-lapse ka dyan, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, wala ka na. Medyo na technical ka na dun sa procedural due process. Yan. So, assessment shall be made within 3 years from due date of filing. So, collection shall be made, sabi nga dito, no? Within 5 years sa book natin from the date of assessment. The failure of the government to observe these rules violates the requirement of due process. Ito, uso to sa BIR, syempre. Pag nag-lapse na yung 3 years na to, o yung period na inalaw ng government, sabi dito, pag violate mo to, no, madi-dismiss yung case. No? So, maraming case yan when you Google it. Ano yung mga businessman, malalaking companies na na-acquit. No? Yung 10 billion na liability na dismiss. No? natalo yung BIR kasi nga yung span ng due date or ng collection, nag-lapse na siya. So, natalo sila doon technically sa procedural due process. Ayan. So, quick break ulit. Sabi ni Daniel Milstein, you don't get what you wish for. You get what you work for. So, we are investing right now an ample amount of work, no? Hard work is hard, no? Sabi nga, 'di ba? Hindi siya maging worth it kung wish ka lang wish. If you are not matching it with hard work, no? Working smart. So we have to do it. Not just pray for it and parang si Juan Tamad na antayin mo lang yung bayabas, mahulog dun sa sanga, no? You have to get it. No? You have to do your part as well. Right? So, quick break muna before we continue this. We are talking yung constitutional limitations pa rin ng taxation power. Alright? So, after ng due process, meron din yung equal protection of law. So, sabi nga natin yung government natin, pantay-pantay dapat yung pagtingin sa mga tao. So, no person shall be denied the equal protection of the law. Okay? So, lahat ng tao, regardless of their sexual orientation, religion, race, color, no, taxpayers should be treated equally, both in terms of rights conferred and obligation imposed. So, yeah. So, same circumstances and conditions. As long as, syempre, sabi nga dito, equal protection of law, parang ano lang din yan. Hindi pwedeng yung Congress natin i-exempt yung seller ng balot. Tapos, isasabek na lalo yung Penoy. Nagbibenta ng Penoy, no? So, hindi pwede. So, dapat equal. So, to tax since they are essentially same goods. Okay? So, after this equal protection of the law, we have this uniformity rule in taxation. So, the rule of taxation shall be uniform and equitable. So, hindi pwedeng pareho kayong taxpayer, pareho yung nature ng business mo, tapos magkaiba yung taxes na tinatax sa'yo. So, it's a violation dito sa rule ng taxation. Dapat uniform. No? Dapat uniform siya. So, taxpayers should be classified according to commonality or attributes. So, each class is taxed differently, but taxpayers falling under the same class are taxed the same. So, uniformity is relative equality. So, sa pangkalahatan, like for example, nagbebenta kayo ng for example, sari-sari store, no? Ano ba yung laman ng sari-sari store, no? Lahat ng sari-sari stores, same yung classification ng taxes dyan. So, uniform siya. Okay? Ano pa? Uniformity, dapat through uniform, equitable, no? Inulit lang. And progressive. Ano ba yung pag sinabi natin progressive? Okay? Congress shall evolve a progressive system of taxation. Kasi nga, syempre pataas ng pataas yung cost of living, pataas rin yung mga fuel prices, tumataas din yung yung mga bilihin, no, mga sa international market. So kailangan progresibo yung system natin. So tax rates increase as the tax base increases. Like for example, yung income ko last year is 1 million, tapos ngayon naging 2 million. No, 2 million, half of the year pa lang. So, tumataas yung tax base natin, tumataas rin yung tax rates natin. Yan. So, progressive yung ginagamit ng Philippine government. So, Congress shall evolve a progressive tax system natin. Ano pa? Moreover, yung progressive system aids in an equitable distribution of wealth to society by taxing the rich more than poor. Kasi nga, yung mga rich people have a bigger capacity to pay more taxes than those poor people. Siyempre, dapat equitable din yung taxes natin. Hindi pwedeng uniform, hindi pwedeng one time, big time. Parang example yung tax ng isang businessman doon sa mga regular workers, same lang yung binibayad. So, hindi pwedeng ganun. So, dapat equitable din siya. Right? So, we have this non-imprisonment for non-payment of debt or poll tax. So, as a policy, no one shall be imprisoned because of his poverty, and no one shall be imprisoned for mere inability to pay debt. So, yan. Okay, but when we talk about debt, syempre, kung inutang mo siya, pero in bad faith, kasi nga may motibo ka na hindi mo siya babayaran, then magiging estafa yun na kaso. So, a criminal offense punishable by imprisonment. Alright? Okay, so proceed tayo dito sa ano. Ayan. Is non-payment of tax equivalent to non-payment of debt? So, sabi dito, tax arises from law and is a demand of sovereignty. It is distinguished from debt which arises from private contracts. Magkaiba sila. Excuse me. Yung tax natin, nag-arise siya doon dahil sa income or yung revenue na na-earn natin. Excuse me. It is distinguished kasi yung debt natin is yung galing doon sa private contracts natin. From the banks, no? So, yan yung pinagkaiba nila. So, non-payment of tax compromises public interest. Kasi nga, yung purpose ng tax natin is for the public purpose. No? For the public services. So, kung once hindi tayo nagbayad ng tamang buwis or hindi tayo parang nag-understate tayo ng mga revenue natin para makasave kuno no, sa tax that we should pay, then sabi nga dito, the non-payment of tax is similar to crime. So parang krimen siya. So the constitutional guarantee on non-imprisonment for non-payment of debt does not extend to non-payment of tax except poll tax. Ayan. So proceed tayo, no? Pasadahan lang natin. We're almost done with the first part, no? Yung presentation natin. Poll tax, ano pa pag sinabing poll tax, yan yung mga basic community tax and yung additional community tax. Okay, so mga important things lang yung kailangan natin i-discuss. Ito maganda rin, the state should set an example of good faith among its constituents. So, ito naman yung principle na non-impairment of obligation and contract. It should not set aside its obligation from contracts by the exercise of its taxation power. So, tax exemptions granted under contracts should be honored and should not be cancelled by a unilateral government action. Pag sinabi ng government natin, lahat ng agricultural products, no, are exempted sa tax. So, dapat kailangan maging makatarungan or in good faith yung government natin na dapat sundin rin nila yung kanilang responsibility. So, pag sinabi nilang tax exempt siya, then kailangan nilang i-honor. No? Okay, sabi dito, no, yung author ng sayings na to is unknown. Do something now. Your future self will thank you for later. Do something now. Your future self will thank you for later. Ano yung kailangan mong gawin ngayon that your 40-year-old Elvy or 30-year-old Elvy, no? Ano yung maging thankful siya na ginawa mo today. So like for example, you are studying tax. Yeah. So you will be thankful something dahil you put some hard work in everything that you do. So continue lang tayo. Yeah. So free worship rule. So the Philippine government natin adopts free exercise of religion. So regardless kung anong religion mo, wala tayong yung gobyerno natin, mga non-partisan yan. So, regardless of your religion, nire-respeto yan and does not subject its exercise to taxation. So yung mga churches, yung mga religion natin, hindi yan tinatax. Exempted sila. Except lang for those entities na merong parang for profit sila. Meron silang earnings. Yeah. Exemption, actually, directly. Okay. Ano pa? Doctrine of use, wherein only properties actually devoted for religious, charitable, or educational, yan lang yung exempted from real property. Okay? So, meron tayong doctrine of ownership. Since hindi naman siya applicable dito sa Philippines, we'll just skip it, no? So, if you want to dig deeper, meron tayong book, syempre. Malaking tulong din if we study from this book, no? We have also need to consider yung mga chapter exercises for each chapter, no? So, maganda rin balikan natin ano yung mga correct answers dito. Okay? So, to continue, ayan. Non-appropriation of public funds. Ibig sabihin lang nito, guys, hindi pwede mag-appropriate yung gobyerno natin para doon sa benefit ng religion na yun. So, hindi siya pwede. Hindi siya pwede mag-donate ka doon sa regardless kung anong klaseng religion. So, hindi pwedeng mag-release ng pondo yung LGU para doon sa favor ng isang religion. Kasi nga dyan yung principle, yung separability of, or tinatawag na yung state daw is separate dun sa church. Okay, so it should be noted, however, that compensation to priests, imams, or religious ministers working with the military, penal institutions, no, is not considered religious appropriation. Pag may mga pastors na nagtatrabaho sa government, yung sweldo nila is not hindi naman illegal yun. Kasi proper expense naman yun. Ayan, so exemptions from taxes, revenues, ayan, pasadahan lang natin, no? Okay, these exemptions, however, applies only on revenues and assets that are actually directly and exclusively devoted for educational purposes. Okay. However, sige. We're almost done. Non-diversification tax collections. Yung tax collections natin, ulit-ulit lang, no? As we discussed, para lang yan dun sa public purpose. So, hindi pwedeng gamitin sa mga private purpose ng politicians or anyone in the government. Non-delegation, and discuss na rin natin, of power of taxation. Okay, what else? Mga important things na kailangan natin, ayan, non-impairment, appropriations. Okay, the origin of the bill by the Congress does not necessarily mean that the House bill must become the final law. Yan, mga technical terms yan, no? Dito sa ating mga taxation laws. Ayan, each LGU, local government unit, shall exercise the power to create its own sources of revenue and shall have a just share in the national taxes. Okay? So, autonomy, kasi nga each LGU, meron silang local autonomy compared doon sa mga national government natin. No? Although may share naman sa mga taxes collected doon sa BIR, no? If you want to consider studying more about the updates dito sa share from internal revenue allocations. So we have I think 2021, no, yung Mandanas ruling ng Supreme Court natin, wherein in-increase pa yung IRA or internal revenue allocation ng LGU. So next year mas malaki yung income ng mga LGUs natin. Alright? So I think this is the end of the first part ng ating Chapter 1, Introduction to Taxation. Sinorten ko lang siya kasi nga meron pa tayong Part 2 para dito sa Chapter 1. Okay? So just to conclude this first part, sabi ni Swati Sharma, the best way to gain self-confidence is to do what you are afraid to do. Ano ba yung mga things na takot kang gawin? No? So, kung gusto mo mag-earn or maging self-confident ka, so you have to overcome those fears. You have to do those things na takot ka. Like for example, takot ka mag-speak in front of the camera, or if you are afraid to speak no sa maraming tao, you have to do it no consistently para masanay ka, then you will earn your self confidence. So once again, yan yung end ng part 1 natin. I am your online motivator, no? Dito sa hashtag Taxation natin and hashtag Inspire Nation. So, yung book natin, no, huwag niyo kakalimutan, by Sir Rex Banggawan. Okay. Income Taxation, bago-bago, 2021. So, I will see you guys sa next part natin, part 2, no, ng ating chapter 1. Bye!